Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Citrus Twist Tote, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description. There you will find a link to both right and left-handed video tutorials, and that page will include links out to the written pattern and all of the supplies you need, as well as the other tutorials that I will mention here today. For this pattern, you'll need a USI 5.5 millimeter hook. This one is a clover or more. You'll also need 4 colors, or more or less, depending on what you want to do, of Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie. Now you can see here in my Citrus Twist Tote, I went with some beautiful citrusy colors: lime, white, bright orange, and lemony. But of course, you can use whichever colorways you like, and I've put together a couple of other options here for you to consider. Some gorgeous blues and greens for a beachy colorway, or maybe a berry smoothie colorway. You can really have a lot of fun with this pattern. Of course, in addition, you'll need your standard crochet supplies like stitch markers, scissors, and a yarn needle. Let's take a look at the finished Citrus Twist Tote. All right, here I have what remains of the colors of yarn that I used making the original, so you can see you don't use a full ball of any of the 4 colors. I began with the green colorway here, color A, and I started at the bottom of the bag. And I used one of my favorite techniques here for making tote bag bottoms, where I work back and forth in rows, and then stop and work all the way around, just changing to rounds, working around that rectangle to create a really nice base for my tote bag. I'll show you that here in a few minutes, but I do also have a tutorial specifically on this technique linked at the link in the description and on the YouTube channel. After that, of course, we change colors, and all the odd numbered rows after you make this base, of course, once you begin the main stitch pattern up here, where we're changing colors, all the odd numbered rows are made in color B, which is our white colorway here. So that is just really easy. After that, we're just cycling through our colors: green, orange, yellow, green, orange, yellow, green, orange, yellow, green, orange, and finally yellow for the handles and topper. So let's go ahead and get stitching our Citrus Twist Tote. All right, now row 1 of the Citrus Twist Tote is made with color A, which for me is this lime colorway, and a foundation double crochet row of 40 stitches. If you're not familiar with the foundation double crochet, I do have a separate tutorial linked at the link in the description and on the YouTube channel. If you prefer not to use the foundation double crochet, you can simply chain and then double crochet back across. As long as you end up with 40 double crochet stitches at the end of the first row, that's what matters. After that, rows 2 through 4 are the same. You just chain 2, which does not count as a stitch, and then double crochet in each and every stitch across. So at the end of row 4, you should have 4 rows of 40 double crochets each. So I will see you when we get to the end of row 4. All right, here I am with 4 rows of double crochet made. Now, as I mentioned, this pattern starts with 40 double crochets in each row. Obviously, I haven't made that many. I only have 16 here, which is enough to demonstrate the pattern. So if you want to change the size of your bag, you can add or subtract any multiple of 8 to your first row. Just maintain that through rows 2 through 4 before you switch to round 5, so that you can maintain a multiple of 8 when we begin our fancy stitch pattern for the body of the bag. So let's go ahead and move on to round 5. I'm going to go ahead and start with a chain 2, and then it begins just the same way as all the other rows. We're just going to double crochet in each one of those 40 or however many stitches you've got on across until we get to the end. So I will see you when we get to the end, which is the first section of round 5. All right, so as we begin round 5 here, at first it just looks like a row 5, but after we've worked our way across, we're going to turn and double crochets into the sides of the previous 4 rows. We don't want to work back into the side of the row we just made, because that's part of our current round. We want to come down here to the previous row and work 2 double crochets right into the side of each row. Now, working into the edge is a little bit of a combination of art and science, I always say. It's a matter of finding where you like the look of the stitches, whether you split the stitch or go into that chain 2 to add your stitches or go around the stitch as a whole is totally personal preference. For this pattern in particular, especially, no right or wrong. Whatever makes you happy, whatever you think looks best, whatever makes your hook happy. So just make sure you work 8 stitches total, 2 in the sides of each row, on down the side here until we get back down to our foundation chain or the bottom of our foundation stitches, however you got those initial 40 stitches or your multiple of 8. So I will work my way right on down the side here. I've got one more. Just going to double check here. I've got the end of my rows there, and I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 worked right into the side. Now I'm going to turn again, and here we have, like I say, that foundation chain or the bottom of our foundation double crochet stitches. So there should be another basically 40 stitches here waiting at the bottom for you to work into. If you made foundation stitches, you should have 2 loops to work into down here. If you crocheted in the back hump of your chain, you would have 2 loops to work into down here. If you crocheted under the top 2 loops, you're only going to have 1 loop to crochet into. But regardless, you just want to crochet all the way across the bottom of your foundation chain. When we get to the other end here, of course, when we've made our 40 or however many stitches across our foundation chain, then again, we'll just work 2 stitches into the sides of each of these sides of the rows, this end over here, which will bring us right back up here to where we began round 5, and we can join with a slip stitch to that first double crochet. So I'm going to keep crocheting across, and you can too, and I will see you when we get to the end of round 5. Okay, so at the end of round 5, you worked across the foundation chain, up that other side with 8 more stitches, and you are ready to slip stitch in the top of that first double crochet you made. Make sure though that you don't end up accidentally crocheting into the side of the round you are currently making. So at the end of round 5, you should have a total of 96 stitches, and from here on out, we're going to be working in the round. Round 6 is very simple. We're just going to chain 2 and work a double crochet in every stitch around and join with a slip stitch when we're done. So I will see you at the end of round 6. All right, so when you get to the end of round 6, again, you should have 96 stitches. So at this point, you're ready to join with a slip stitch to that very first double crochet you made in the beginning of round 6. However, this is where we're going to change colors to our color B. So rather than slip stitching with the color we've been using, I'm going to let that end hang. Try and get a proper hold of this color B here. There we are. And we're going to yarn over and do the slip stitch with this color. For my bag, I used my white color B for all my odd numbered rows from here on out. Of course, you could use a different color or mix it up. I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, like I said, with the color B, kind of pull that tight there, and then just let that end hang to be woven in later. Then, to begin round 7, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet in the first stitch. So that's that very first one we joined to right there. And at this point, you can take those ends there, or that end of the white, and tuck it in. I want to leave the end of the green still hanging out where it is so I can pick it up and use it again later. I'm just going to run it along the inside of the bag. If you prefer, you could absolutely cut that off and weave it in every time you do a color change. Up to you. So, all right, round 7, we've got that first single crochet made. After that, we begin our repeat, which starts with the asterisk in the written pattern. We're going to chain 2. Then we skip the next stitch, so that's this stitch right here. Then we single crochet in the next stitch, right there, like so. And then we chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and skip 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the next stitch, and we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, like so. After that, our repeat begins again. We chain 2, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and skip 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet in the stitch after that. And of course, then again, that's our repeat all the way around. So let's do it one more time together. We chain 2, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 5 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and single crochet in the stitch after that. So just continue that repeat all the way around, and I'll see you when we get to the end of round 7. All right, so when you come to the end of round 7, and if you're looking at the written pattern, you'll notice after you skip those 5 stitches, that single crochet is right there. So that's where we end that final repeat, simply by slip stitching to that very first single crochet made. However, this is also when we're going to change colors again. So rather than pulling through with that white, I'm going to let it hang again in the back because I will definitely be picking that up again soon. I would not cut your color B if you're going to keep using it the way I have. But at this point now, we're going to yarn over and pull through our color C, which for me was the bright orange. So let's go ahead and make our slip stitch with the bright orange. Just sort of hold onto your stitches, try to keep them from pulling up too much. If you find your loops are getting a little too big, you can take the time to come back here and just give them a little tug. Tug down on those ends. That'll help tighten up those stitches. And of course, when you weave in this end here, or rather pull it back up and weave in that end, you'll be able to secure those a little bit more as well. So let's go ahead and continue with round 8. The first thing we're going to do after we've made our slip stitch there is go ahead and slip stitch into this this chain 2 section right here. So we're just going to go right in there with a slip stitch. Then we are going to chain 1 and single crochet back in that chain 2 space right there, like so. Then we are going to do 3 double crochets, a chain 1, and 3 double crochets in the next chain 4 space. So again, we're just working in the space here, not into the individual chains at all, just into the space. We're going to skip over the stitches in between. So let's make 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and, try that again, 3. You can see I'm going right around that whole chain. I'm not trying to go into any individual chains. Then we chain 1 and make 3 double crochets right in that same chain 4 space. So 1, 2, and 3. And you can see this sort of creates a shell with a chain 1 right there. After that, we begin our repeat that will take us around the rest of the bag. Single crochet in the next chain 2 space. Easy enough. And then 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain 4 space. That's it. That's all we have to do for round 8. So we're just going to continue working our way around, and I will see you when we get to the end of round 8. All right, so when you come to the end of round 8, you'll finish up with 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, worked in that last chain 4 space there, and then you are ready to slip stitch to that first single crochet you made. So, of course, we are going to change colors again. And at this point, we're going to be pulling up the white again, or your color B. So you want to find the end that's not the end, but the end that's still attached to the yarn, and yarn over with that to finish this slip stitch. So just carefully pull that through again, and you're ready for round 9. Now, round 9 and round 11 and 13 and 15 and 17 on through until you're about ready for the handles are all going to be the same. We're going to start with a chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to treble crochet right into that first stitch. So a treble crochet, we yarn over twice. We go right back into that indicated stitch, the top of that single crochet. And at this point, I would normally yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2 to finish a treble crochet. However, I really want to start tacking down the yarns that I'm going to be carrying along the inside of my bag. Again, if you're cutting the yarn or using a solid color for the whole bag, you may not need to do this. But I want to keep my yarns carried along the inside. I don't like weaving in ends. So I'm going to yarn over twice, insert my hook just as I did before. But at this point, I want to take the connected ends. So not the tail ends here that are going to get woven in later, but the ends I want to crochet with later, the ends that are still attached to the yarn. Of the colors I'm not using, so in this case that would be the orange and the green, and I just want to make sure that those get enclosed in this next stitch. And I can do that just by laying them right over my hook like this before I yarn over and pull through my loop. There we are. So I'll just lay those right over my hook, right in back of my work, and when I pull through that loop, I'll go ahead and finish my treble crochet as normal. But if we look at the back, you can see those have been pulled up, and now they're sort of nicely secured back here. So from here on out, every time I change colors, that first stitch I make, I want to go ahead and tack down the unused colors in back so that they're carried along right where I need them. Because of the slip stitch that we're going to be making in our even numbered rows, which I'll show you again here in a minute, like when we began our orange row and we slip stitched into that first chain 2 space, our project will keep leaning, so don't worry about the fact that your carried threads or your carried yarns are going to be on a diagonal. That's totally fine. So let's go ahead and turn back around here to the right side and continue on with our round 9. So I've made the chain 3 and I've treble crocheted in our first stitch. This chain 3 is not going to count as a stitch. So if need be, you can put a stitch marker right in the top of that treble crochet to mark it as your first stitch. All right, then we can continue on crocheting, and we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to make a cluster, chain 4 cluster in the next single crochet. So that means we are going to skip over all these double crochets and that chain 1 in between and hop all the way over to this single crochet here. Now, a cluster can mean different things depending on the pattern. It's more of a category than a specific stitch. So to make this cluster, it's a treble crochet 2 together worked into the indicated stitch, just 1 stitch. So it's not a decrease because we're working into just 1 stitch. So I'm going to yarn over twice as I would for a normal treble crochet. Go right into that indicated stitch there, the single crochet, and start my treble crochet until I have 2 loops left on the hook. Then I'm going to yarn over twice again, go back into that same stitch, pull up my loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and then finally yarn over and pull through all 3 of the last loops to finish the stitch. And that is a cluster for this pattern. Don't worry, I'll be making a few more. After that first cluster, you're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to cluster right back in that same stitch. So it's almost like a big cluster V stitch. Yarn over twice, go back into that same stitch again, start your treble crochet, but stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over again twice, pull up some more yarn if you need to like I did, go back in that stitch, pull up our loop, pull through 2, pull through 2, then finally pull through 3 to finish off the stitch. So there is our first cluster, chain 4 cluster. After that, we chain 2 again, chain 2, and then that is basically our repeat. We do a cluster, chain 4 cluster in the next single crochet. Again, skip all those double crochets in between. So to make our cluster, remember, we start a treble crochet, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over twice again, go back into that same stitch, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through all 3. Then chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to cluster back in that same stitch again. Yarn over twice, go back in that same stitch, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over twice more, go back into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, then yarn over and pull through all 3. Then we just chain 2 again, skip over all these and do the same thing in the next single crochet. And that's what we're going to continue doing all the way around for round 9 and all our round 9 repeats. So I will see you at the end of round 9. All right, so when you get to the end of your round 9 repeats, you've got your chain 2 here. We skip, remember, all these double crochets, but over here we've got that first stitch where we had our chain 3 and treble. That's going to act as the first cluster, or rather the second cluster. We need to make the first half now. So we're going to yarn over twice and go right back in that first stitch. And it's fine if you end up enclosing those ends again, just tack them down extra well. You can just kind of pull your loop up nice and high there so it doesn't squinch down too funny. Then we're going to continue making our cluster stitch here just as we did before. Yarn over and pull through 3. Then we can chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and then we are going to join with a slip stitch to that marked stitch. We had that chain 3 and treble crochet. The chain 3 plus a treble sort of acts like a treble crochet 2 together cluster. So we just want to treat that treble crochet as the top of our first stitch. Before I do that though, I'm going to get this stitch marker out of the way. And I also want to pull up our color D because this is where I switched to color D. You, of course, might not be switching depending on how you're using the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that back, pick up my color D, and finish that slip stitch with our new color, just like so. Just gently pull that through. Then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch right into that chain 2 space, the very next chain 2 space. Then I chain 1, And now I am going to single crochet into the chain 1 space below. So remember, we skipped over all those double crochets with the chain 1 in the middle. That's where we're going to crochet into, but we want to enclose the chain 2 space above it. So let's do that together now. I am going to insert my hook down into that chain 1 space. And when I do that, you can see that chain 2 is right on top. Now, because it's our first stitch, we also want to tack down the other colors we're not using. So I want to find that yellow, or excuse me, I'm using yellow. So the orange and the green and the white, and lay those over my hook as I make this single crochet stitch. So I'll just go ahead and pull that loop right on up. Make sure all those ends are in the back, not in the front. Make sure your chain 2 is also enclosed. Pull that up, yarn over, and make a single crochet, just like so. There we are. Got a little twisted, but easy enough. Perfectly untwisted. So that has anchored down all our other colors. From now on, we just let those hang for the rest of this round. Off to the side, if our yarn is trying to tangle, we can kind of set aside the one color you're working with. I find that works really well to keep them from getting tangled. If I sort of keep the one I'm working with to the side and push the rest off together, then that tends to keep them untangled. So, all right, after that, we're ready to continue with our round 10. We are going to make 3 double crochets and a chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain 4 space. Sounds a little familiar, right? After this, all our even numbered rows are going to be the same. We're just going to be changing colors to make our color pattern. So 3 double crochets, chain 1. Here are 3 more double crochets. They're all going in that chain 4 space in between our clusters. Oops. Try that again. There we go. And then we are going to single crochet again. We're going to jump down to that chain 1 space that we skipped over before. Make sure that chain 2 is enclosed in our stitch. Just tacked right down as if it was an end almost, but it's fine if you can see it. There we are. And single crochet. Then we're ready again to make 3 double crochets and a chain 1 and 3 double crochets in that next chain 4 space. So let's do that one more time here together, and then we'll enclose one more stitch, and then I'll send you off to finish round 10 on your own. So I've got my 3 double crochets, chain 1, finishing up my second half here. There we are, all set. Jump over here, jump down to that chain 1, and enclose the chain 2 above it in a single crochet. So that's how we're going to continue on around for round 10 and most of the even numbered rows until we get to our handle. So I will see you when we get to the end of round 10. All right, so when you get to the end of round 10, of course, we've got our 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, and all we need to do is slip stitch back in that single crochet stitch. So at this point, we would drop that color, and we want to finish our slip stitch with color B, which is what we're using for all our odd numbered rows. So go ahead and gently pull that slip stitch right on through. And I like to give color B a little wiggle here. I don't want to pull it up too tight and create, a squinching effect on my bag. I don't want this section to seem too tight. And I also don't want it too loose so that my stitches get all loose and wobbly. I just want to give it a little wiggle, sort of pull it through. I can give that yellow a little tug right there to make sure that stitch looks the right size. Just sort of finagle it until I feel comfortable. After that, I'm ready to begin round 9 again. Although it's round 11, it's just a round 9 repeat where we start again with a chain 3 and a double crochet, a treble crochet right back in that first stitch. Again, make sure to grab your unused colors. Now we've got 3 of them. We've got our yellow, our orange, and our green. Not that part of the yellow, that's our tail. Let's try that again. There we go. And then we want the end that's attached to our yarn. We can just lay those right over our hook before we pull through and finish our stitch as normal. So just repeat rounds 9 and 10 until you're ready for the handle. Let's take a look at the finished bag again. All right, taking another look at the finished bag here, you can see here was our round 7 and our round 8, and then our round 9, which is just the repeat, working on up for every odd numbered rows. And then the even numbered rows are the same, of course, we're just changing colors as we work our way up. If I turn this wrong side out so that you can see how I carried the ends along on the inside here, just have to find them. Let's see, get it all laid flat here. Here we are. This is the side. So you can see here, I just tacked them down every time I changed colors. I tried to make sure to work over the colors that I hadn't used yet until I got up here to the top. When I knew I'd made my last round with green, I went ahead and cut that off and wove that end in. my last orange round. I went ahead and cut that off and wove that end in, and then same thing again with the white. And then I went ahead and used my color D or my lemony colorway to make the handles. So let's go ahead and go over that now. Just make sure you end on a color B or odd numbered row, so we're ready to begin our handle rows. All right, so if you're following the written pattern, you'll keep making repeats through round 27, which is of course an odd numbered round and a row 9 repeat. So we've got our color B here. Again, I want to slip stitch with my new color that I'm going to be making my handles in. For my finished bag, I used the lemony colorway. For this one, I decided to go ahead and use the orange on my little swatch here. Again, it's totally up to you. So at this point, I'll just go ahead and find my orange color here to yarn over and pull through with. And I'm not going to bother tacking down any of the other colors at this point. They can all be trimmed off and their ends woven in. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my color B as well, so I can set that aside and have no more tangles as I finish up my handles. Now, the handles begin with round 28. We're just going to chain 1, and then we are going to single crochet in each cluster. We joined to the top of this treble. That counts as a cluster. Remember with our little chain 3 that we're sort of not counting as a stitch, but it gives us that look. So we just want to go ahead and make a single crochet right in the top of that treble right there. After that, we are going to enclose each chain 2 with 2 single crochets worked into the chain 1 space below. So remember we were enclosing these by working into this before with 1 single crochet. Now we just want to do it with 2. So there's 1 and 2. Then we're going to go ahead and single crochet in the top of this cluster like so. And then we are going to work 4 single crochets in the chain 4 space. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we've got another cluster, so we single crochet in the top of that. And then we've got another chain 2 space. So we're going to come down to this chain 1 and work 2 single crochets to enclose it. 1 and 2. Then single crochet in the top of this cluster. Then 4 single crochets in the chain 4 space. And that's how we're going to continue our repeat on around for this round. At the end of round 28, you should be back up to 96 single crochets, which is the number of stitches we had, if you remember, before we began our pattern rows. Whoops. You can see I single crocheted right into that chain 2 space. Got to pull it out. I need to drop down to that chain 1 and enclose it with 2 single crochets. So just keep working your way around. Make sure you single crochet in the top of each cluster. Work 4 single crochets in each of these chain 4 spaces. And then of course enclose those with 2 single crochets worked down there in the chain 1. And I will see you at the end of round 28. Okay, so at the end of round 28, you should come back around to that first single crochet you made. And we're not changing colors anymore, unless you want to. So I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch with our handle color here. For round 30, I'm going to chain 1 and, round 29 is what we're at now. I'm just going to chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch around. This just gives us a really nice base before we begin chaining for our handles. So for round 29, just go ahead and work a single crochet in each stitch around for 96 stitches. And then we'll join at the end of the round, and in round 30, we'll do some chaining to start our handles. All right, so at the end of round 29, you can go ahead and join with a slip stitch. However, at this point, before you move on to round 30, you need to put some stitch markers in the round to figure out the placement for your handles. So you'd go ahead and pull that loop up high, and you can secure this with a stitch marker too if you'd like, so you don't lose any of your stitches here. And then what you're going to want to do is start counting your stitches from the first stitch of this round. And in the written pattern, I've told you to mark stitches 18, 44, 66, and 92. So you would count for the first one, you'd want 18. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and place a stitch marker in that stitch. And then you would want to do it with stitch 44, so you keep counting 19, 20, 21, 22, on around to continue marking stitches 44, 66, and 92. Now, on my little swatch bag, this isn't going to work, obviously, so let's pull back up the finished bag for a moment. Okay, so here we have our finished bag. So at this point, you would have worked this round, of course, to secure that first round down there, and then another round right here of single crochet. So this is the round you'd be putting your stitch markers into. But essentially, again, you just count out those stitch markers. After you've got those stitch markers placed, you want to lay your bag flat like this. Of course, you won't have handles on it. Just tuck those in back there. But you want to make sure that those stitch markers line up front and back. So you'd have two stitch markers on this side and two stitch markers on the back side, and you want to make sure those line up. Count your stitches in between the markers on both sides. Count your stitches on the sides between the markers on both sides. Make sure your bottom is nice and flat and that those line up nicely. And the reason I say this is, although I've given you exact numbers, everyone's gauge is just a little bit different. That's normal, that's natural, nothing we can do about it. But that means your angle might be just ever so slightly different than mine, and your stitch markers might need to be adjusted. So take your time, adjust those, make sure they line up really nicely. If you need a closer look at this technique, again, I do have a separate tutorial linked out for this. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's linked at the link in the description. After you've got your stitch markers placed, then it's time to continue with round 30. All right, so we've got our stitch markers placed in our round 29. I'm back on my little swatch here, so obviously these aren't the exact same numbers, but follow the pattern and check your placement, and then we can continue with round 30. We are going to chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch, including that first one, to our first marker. So just single crochet along until you come to that first marked stitch. Of course, you probably have a few more here than I've got, and that's fine. Again, I'm just working on a tiny little version here so that it's a little easier for you to see. Then we are going to single crochet in that first marked stitch, like so, and then you're going to chain 70. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. You get it till 70. This is the length of handle that I really like. It fits over my shoulder comfortably, but you may want to change this. You can make this handle as long as you want. If you just want a little handle that's more handheld, you could chain 30 or 40. Try it out. Try different lengths. Make a chain, put it over your shoulder, see what length is going to work for you. Just make sure both of your handles have the same chain length. That's going to be the most important thing. So you chain 70, skip all the stitches in between the first stitch marker and the second stitch marker, and continue stitching over there. Obviously, I'm going to have to chain a few more here to reach. I'm not going to worry about counting. You get the idea. You do want to make sure your handles, of course, are the same length. But for the sake of time, I'll just make one long enough to reach here. Then I'm going to jump over to where the second stitch marker is and insert my hook there and make a single crochet in the second marked stitch. Again, you want to skip all the stitches in between. Now on my full size bag, this would not be at the end. We would be skipping stitches on the side here, just because we've made so many rows that's where we've ended up. So you'll need to take that into account too if you make a bunch of alterations to this bag. If you're following the written instructions, this should work out fine. So we've single crocheted in the second marked stitch, so we can go ahead and take that stitch marker out. Again, skipping all the stitches in between, and we're going to single crochet along until we get to the third marked stitch. Just single crochet right along. And then, of course, we're going to do the same thing. We are just going to make a long chain and skip all the stitches in between. Again, if you need a closer look at this technique, that is in the linked tutorial specifically for bag handles. So we'll single crochet in that third marked stitch. We can go ahead and take that stitch marker out if we want, and then we want to chain another 70, or however many we want for our bag handle. Just make sure, obviously, that it's long enough to reach and fit over your shoulder or your arm or in your hand, however you want to adjust that length for you. Make a few more here, just get over to our side. And then I'll find that fourth marked stitch, that last one hanging out over here. I can single crochet right in that one. Again, just skipped all those stitches in between. It would have been a little bit easier if I'd taken that stitch marker out first. Let's try that. There we go. Got my finger on that stitch, so hopefully I won't lose it here now that I've dropped my yarn off my hook. There we go. Get my hook in there and make my single crochet, like so. Then I can just continue single crocheting along until I get back to where I started and join with a slip stitch. And that will be the end of round 30. For round 31, 32, and 33, you're just going to chain 1 and single crochet around. So for round 31, you'll be crocheting in each stitch, and then you want to single crochet in each individual chain. Don't try and single crochet around the whole handle unless that's a different look you're going for. I really think it's important at this stage to crochet into each individual chain. But that's it. Round 31 is just single crochet around into each stitch and chain. Rounds 32 and 33, chain 1 and single crochet around into each stitch. Gives you a nice firm handle. So let's go ahead and take one more look at the finished bag. All right, so here you can see we've got our round 30 where we did a big chain all the way around, and then we came back around for rounds 31, 32, and 33 and created a nice handle. Now after that, I did come back in and join down here and single crochet along the inside of the handle as well. I like to do a little decreasing here sometimes right in the corners. Whatever you like is up to you. And this whole round here on the inside of the handle is optional. I feel it just makes a little bit sturdier, nicer looking handle. But again, it's just single crocheting around and joining when you're done. And here you can see the length of my chain of 70, just right for fitting over my shoulder. But again, you can try it on, make a shorter handle. You could even move those stitch markers in if you wanted just a really small handheld handle here. You can have some fun with it and make this bag just right for you. And that's how you make the Citrus Twist Tote. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you make your own tote, and I hope you'll give Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie a try. It really is a fantastic yarn, and I've really enjoyed using it. Be sure to check the link in the description for the links to both right and left-handed video tutorials, as well as the written pattern and all the supplies you need. Have a great day, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe.